So late last fall, I had an athlete reach out after finishing his first marathon, and though really proud of his accomplishment, he knew that he had more potential and could do better, and so was seeking out working with me so that he could get those improvements that he knew he needed to do better. He essentially said that the first half of the marathon was going really well, he was on track, and in the second half, things started to slowly unravel and it was a slog to the finish line. And this is really a story that I hear from many people running their first marathon. And it's not uncommon because when you're a beginner and you're new at something, it is hard and you have a lot to learn, and that's okay. But of course, we get to a point where we want to level up and do better the next time, right? So this athlete and I started working together, and he took off a whopping 80 minutes off his marathon time from the first to the second one. So he went from a 4:45 to a 3:25. And though those results are not typical, it is very common to, once you start getting your training in place correctly, that you can take off a huge amount of time from your first to your second marathon. And not only that, but also just have a much better experience and have a lot more fun. So if you are ready to level up your marathon training and the marathon race itself, go ahead and listen into these handful of tips that I promise will help you do just that. So number one, you want to start training sooner. So many people make the mistake of not really doing any running or very little while they're waiting around for that training plan to begin. It says 18 weeks, so they think I'm only going to be running for 18 weeks. Really, your training needs to start before the training. This is not only going to help you just be more ready and prepared for that routine as well as the mileage, but it's also going to make sure that you're not getting injured by doing too much too soon. So by having that consistent routine in place before your marathon training begins, it means that your body is going to be ready to adapt to the mileage week by week as it builds. You're going to have that much stronger of an aerobic base, which is only going to serve you better as you get to that marathon distance, and you won't find yourself sidelined from an injury. And this is really common too, guys, is when people aren't running and then all of a sudden do this marathon training plan, they're finding themselves injured and missing lots and lots of weeks, which is just going to make it really tough to have a good experience once you get to race day. So number two is a simple one, and that is just do the work. I know it sounds so easy, but it's crazy how many people just don't do the plan as it was written or as intended. They say that, they just had too many conflicts come up. They just started sort of putting the training haphazardly together. They just decided to do their own thing. And ultimately, at that point, it's not the training plan's fault. It's your fault for not doing the actual training as it was prescribed. And I really believe that unless you're getting the training plan from someone who totally doesn't know what they're doing, any training plan that you use early on is going to get you ready and prepared for the marathon. So a good example of this is like Hal Higdon's Novice 1. That is a really common plan that people choose to use for their first marathon. And it is a good plan for a first-time marathoner to get you ready to have a good experience at your first marathon. But there's all these little paragraphs before that he writes out about how to actually do it, and then the mileage is there. And so you have to do it as it was written, not just the mileage, but the purpose of the runs as well and how he tells you to do them. So if you are one of those people listening to this, knowing that the training plan that you used to get ready for your first marathon wasn't actually put into place correctly, you found yourself maybe only doing 4 of the runs instead of the 5 of the runs, you're missing lots of runs throughout, I would challenge you to just take that plan this time around, use it again, and actually do the work. Try your best to do every single run as prescribed, at least 90 to 95%, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna have a way better marathon experience than you did the first time. Number 3 is bump up the volume or the time on feet. So perhaps you are one of those people who had a plan and you did everything on the plan or most of it, and you know that you gave it a really good go of getting that plan put into place so that you could have a great marathon experience. Now, you wanting to level up and still do better on your second one, then this is the point where you need to start doing something different. You can't just keep doing all of the same things. So one simple way to do that is to start running more volume. So essentially you're focusing on doing more than you did the last training cycle. So let's say maybe you were barely hitting 40-mile weeks in that last training plan. This time around, you want to have the plan of getting to maybe 45, 46 miles per week a couple times around and really building that. But you don't want to just look at those peak weeks or those highest volume weeks, but you want to look at the training as a whole. So when you're looking at the overall volume from an entire training plan, you want to look to try to increase that by about 10% from one training cycle to the next. If you can bump up the mileage by 10%, let's say you were doing 600 miles this training cycle, the second one you're going to do 660. If you put in these other pieces into practice, chances are you're going to have a much better marathon your second time around. Number 4, this is one that I talk about a lot, but it's one of the biggest ways that you can level up your training and have a faster marathon time, and that is by running easy most of the time. Now, the biggest reason why this is my recommendation to you is because people who struggle to get in all of the runs in their marathon training, it's often because they're not running easy enough. So they are very fatigued. Their body is hurting because they're trying to do the runs on their schedule, but they're doing them way too fast. And so they end up saying to themselves, well, I have to take out one of these runs because my body's really hurting and I need the rest, which is entirely true, because you're going too hard, but then you're not getting in the volume that you need to actually be ready for the marathon. The other problem with not going slow enough most of the time that I see is that people can't get through their long runs because they're running their long runs too hard. This is what happened to me when I came back to the marathon distance, when I was kind of trying to figure out how to put the pieces together and train appropriately. I had this very big aha where I started to change things, and it was when I had a couple of long runs where I just could not get through them. I would hit a wall, I would stop and walk after running for most of the miles, and I was just overly fatigued, exhausted, and I would just cut it short. And so if you're noticing this pattern, it is likely because you are running your long runs too fast. So if you learn to slow down, it's going to allow you to get the full distance that you need or time on feet for those long runs so that you can be prepared for your marathon. So biggest thing on this entire list for most of you is probably learn to slow down. Most of you probably think that you're going slow enough when you're actually not. And essentially you really can't go too slow as long as you're staying in the aerobic zone. So just say to yourself, this seems pretty easy. And then say to yourself, but I'm going to slow it down 30 seconds more per mile and see how that goes. And it's probably going to serve you very, very well in this next marathon training cycle. Number 5, if it's not the lack of slowing down that's getting in the way of you having quality runs and getting through them, it's very likely the fueling. So for this one, I want you to learn how to fuel correctly. And how you're going to do that is by practicing and by doing research to figure out what fueling correctly looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and link a video up here that I am encouraging you to watch that talks about all the proper fueling that you need to be doing through marathon training, because a fueled runner is a faster runner. And this is a very huge topic, so I'm not going to really get into it right now, but essentially you should be fueling for really any run beyond just a very short, easy run, especially those long runs and speed sessions that you do need to be fueled well. And that's one of the biggest ways that you're going to make sure that you're not hitting the wall in the marathon. It's a big reason why people struggle so much in those last 6 miles of the marathon is because they just don't have enough carbs. They're not taking in enough fuel. So if you can get that figured out during the training portion, practice it a lot, you're going to show up on race day ready to fuel really well, feel really good, and have a strong race. Number 6 is to add in strength training. Now, if you're someone who was already doing strength training in that earlier marathon training cycle, big kudos to you, because it is tough to fit it all in. And it's okay if you were not doing it in that first marathon training cycle. We all know how much time it takes to do all the training runs that you need to do when training for a marathon. But if you are wanting to level up your marathon training and have a faster marathon and stay injury-free in the process, you have to add in strength training. So it's really not optional here. It should be part of the training. That doesn't mean that you have to be doing a lot. It really can just be in fairly small doses a couple times a week. The main thing is that you need to be consistent and just doing the right exercises. But again, it's simple. It's not trying to do all of these different exercises. And I think that that's where people, get discouraged and don't end up doing any strength training because they think that it has to be complicated, but it doesn't. So I will link a couple videos too that show some strength training that I do that would highly recommend just incorporating into your training cycle a couple times a week. Okay, number 7 is incorporate speed in small doses. Now, I purposely chose to put this one towards the end because it's not actually something that most runners are probably going to have to do to level up their marathon, especially if they're still in those newer beginner stages for second, third marathon. And typically we're seeing that runners are running too hard all the time, not slowing down enough. And so you want to work on your aerobic endurance first. It comes from the easy running. Then you can start putting in those small doses of speed that are going to level up your training and make you a faster runner. I'm not talking about things being super complicated here or super fast. If you can just start with having a tempo run each week, or maybe you are doing every other week, 1 week's a tempo run, next week you're working on hills and you're putting strides at the end of a couple runs a week, that is plenty, that is enough, and is going to teach your body to run fast. Lastly, as you get closer to the end of the marathon training block, you want to focus those in on more race pace runs, that marathon pace that you are hoping to run, that you know that you have the potential for. And if you're not sure what you have the potential for, you definitely want to check out my video about finding your goal pace. And that's using some other races to determine what is your marathon goal pace, what is actually realistic for you at this time. Once you figure that out, then you can start incorporating your race pace, marathon race pace speed into one workout per week. Number 8 is be coachable. Now, you don't have to be working one-on-one with a running coach like me to be coachable. You just have to be open and willing to learn and listen to things like podcasts and YouTube videos and read books from the experts and actually use that advice to your advantage so that you can grow and get better as a runner. Now, going back to that athlete that I started working with in the fall who took 80 minutes off his marathon time, he's one of the most coachable athletes that I've worked with. He's always asking how he can improve. He's open to feedback. He uses that feedback to improve and get better. He checks his ego at the door. He knows that there is a lot to learn, and because he's so coachable, he's only going to improve and get better and better. So I encourage you to do the same, because when you can open up, be vulnerable to knowing that you don't know it all and that there is a lot to learn, that's where the magic and the growth happens.